Well, the Israeli planes and tanks have pounded areas across the Gaza Strip. These strikes come as the White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday amid U.S. calls for a more focused military campaign. On Monday, Israelis protesting against Netanyahu's government marched on to Tel Aviv and the Jerusalem highway. They carried Israeli flags and photos of Israeli hostages held in Gaza. This as divisions and disagreements within the Israeli cabinet on the conduct and priorities of the war against Hamas continue to simmer. Mass demonstrations were also seen outside the Knesset, where protesters clashed with the police. And WION's Jody Cohen is tracking the anti-Netanyahu protests closely and sent us this report.
Anti-government protesters in Israel have organised the day of disruption, calling for elections now, citing the failure to bring home the remaining 128 hostages still being held in Gaza and the tens of thousands of Israelis who are unable to return to their homes because of the threats from Hamas and Hezbollah. Now you can see posters of the hostages have been put up on the motorways, but the traffic is moving. There is reportedly a convoy of 1,000 cars headed to Jerusalem, and there have been some clashes between police and protesters. Now the police say the protesters plan to set fire to cars to block the highway between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. The protesters' demand is for Parliament to disband itself within the next 3 weeks, or they say they will shut down the entire country. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that the protesters don't reflect the majority of the people. This is Jody Cohen for WION World as One.
On the other hand, conditions continue to remain tense in Israeli-occupied West Bank. Israeli soldiers and police were involved in an altercation with Israeli settlers last week. Over 500 people have been killed by Israeli soldiers and settlers in the West Bank since the beginning of the war. And our next report brings you the details of the ongoing hostilities in the Gaza Strip.
Residents said Israeli planes and tanks pounded areas across the Gaza Strip on Sunday. Over 24 Palestinians were killed in the enclave, most of them in a strike on a house in Nusayrat in the central Gaza Strip, according to Gaza health officials and Hamas. Abu Khaled Monez lives near the house that was hit.
The house was flattened to earth and the entire square around it. Where we are has been destroyed. We have martyrs, the entire house with everyone inside. No one survived except a young boy aged 8 or 9 months.
The strikes came as White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu amid US calls for a more focused military campaign. Washington worries for the hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians sheltering in the southern Gaza city of Rafah, and has cited a need not just to evacuate them, but also to ensure adequate alternative accommodation. Israel has been pushing into the city that it says is the last bastion of Hamas forces. For many, it was one of their few remaining places of refuge. Speaking to Reuters on Friday, Rafah resident Majid Omran said his family had fled and returned to what was left of their home in the southern city of Khan Yunis. Across the Gaza Strip, there is no safety, he said. We took our children, grandchildren and daughters and we came and lived above the rubble of our home because there is no place to take refuge here. Israeli forces also pushed deeper into the narrow alleyways of Jabalia in northern Gaza overnight and into Sunday. The Israeli military has said its operations in Jabalia, the largest of Gaza's 8 historic refugee camps, are precise and meant to stop Hamas from re-establishing its grip there. According to Israeli tallies, the October 7th Hamas assault on Israel that sparked the war killed 1,200 people. More than 35,300 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli strikes since then, according to the enclave's health ministry. Aid agencies have warned of widespread hunger in Gaza and shortages of fuel and medical supplies.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.